Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Patmos. Merry Christmas. It is Christmas morning on this December 25th, 2025. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And I also want to present a serious topic, even on this Christmas day. So I don't know if you've heard the following news, but this has been announced over the last several days. The Center for Disease Control recently announced that it has funded a $1.6 million study uh, to be performed by researchers from the University of South Denmark. This study is very problematic. I'll go beyond that. It's not just problematic is blatantly unethical. So, what is this study? Well, this is a study that is being conducted by a group that has a long history, a well established track record of doing really bad research. They're basically an anti vax group, and they conduct poorly done studies to try to gin up the argument against vaccination. Robert Kennedy has cited prior research from this group, which has been universally condemned around the world by other investigators as garbage research, but Kennedy thinks it's good. This research group has also been connected to Dr. Tracy Beth Hogue, who is a doctor in the United States, currently candidate. Oh, she works for the FDA now. She's working with Dr. Prasad at the FDA. She's an anti-vaxxer, and so she has some connection to this group. Anyhow, here's what they're going to do. Here's what the study. The details of the study have not been shared. This is a very quietly funded study. So we don't know the exact, but here's the essence of the study. What these researchers propose to do is go to Guinea in West Africa and to assess what happens to babies if they're given the hepatitis B vaccination at birth, which is what is recommended by the World Health Organization and what the nation of Guinea is implementing, versus delaying that vaccination for 6 months. And they purport to be assessing over a 5-year period what the rate or risk is of non-specific effects. So they're looking to see if giving this vaccination at birth or 6 months later has any non-specific effects, positive or negative. And this is being done only in Africa, and it's only being done on African babies. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because in that part of the world, hepatitis B infection, chronic hepatitis B infection, is very common. I believe 20% of the population, the adult population of that nation, has chronic hepatitis B. So it's a very high risk situation. Let me be really clear. This study is unethical because we know for a fact, there's no question, there is no doubt, the amount of evidence over the last 30 years is unequivocal that giving hepatitis B vaccination at birth prevents almost entirely the risk of hepatitis B infection in the neonatal period. That's important because, as you may know, hepatitis B infection can lead to chronic hepatitis B, chronic persistent hepatitis, and chronic active hepatitis, which is not curable. You have that for life. People with chronic hepatitis are at high risk for developing, almost guaranteed, to develop cirrhosis of the liver and all that goes with it. For those who understand cirrhosis of the liver, you know about esophageal varices and hemorrhage and all of that. You get liver failure and cirrhosis of the liver with ascites. It's a very bad thing to have. And they also are at very high risk for developing hepatocellular carcinoma or hepatoma, which is a very, very bad cancer of the liver, almost impossible to treat or cure. And it's a fatal disease, and it's a really bad disease. People with chronic hepatitis are going to get cirrhosis and are going to get hepatocellular carcinoma. So by delaying the vaccination at childhood, you're putting these babies at risk for 6 months of exposure to this virus, which once they get, they're stuck with it, and they're going to have a bad outcome because of that. And that's what this study purports to do. Study the effect of delayed vaccination at childbirth versus 6 months later. So here we have a known benefit the hepatitis B vaccination, a known benefit. And what they're going to do is actively withhold that from babies for 6 months just to see if there's going to be some problem. And it's based upon this argument that Dr. Malone raised at the CDC ACIP meeting, where he talked about the elephant in the room, and that is that getting a lot of vaccinations in early childhood, maybe it's a problem. Of course, there's no evidence that it is, but maybe it's a problem. We don't know. And so, for that reason, CDC ACIP changed the recommendation on universal neonatal HBV vaccination, and they now made it voluntary. So, this is all part of this mindset that the hepatitis B vaccination might have risk, even though there's no evidence of it, and there's tons of evidence of benefit. So, we're going to pull back on it. And now we have this study that's going to compare these two groups, those vaccinated at birth versus those vaccinated 6 months later, with a vaccine that we know is highly effective at preventing hepatitis B. So that on its face is an unethical study. And in the text below, I've gone into detail as to exactly why it is utterly unethical. But does it sound familiar to you? Can you think of another study that was done where a group of people, Black people, had a known effective treatment withheld for a long period of time just to see what would happen to them? Sound familiar? Does the name Tuskegee ring a bell? If it doesn't, it's all in the text below. For those who need a refresher, Tuskegee was one of the most heinous, horrific, unethical, immoral things that we have ever done. Between the 1940s and I think 1972, hundreds of Black men with syphilis in the United States were divided into two groups. One group got known effective curative treatment with penicillin, and the other group didn't. They were given a sham placebo treatment for what was called bad blood. They basically got nothing. The intent of the study was to see what would happen to people, Black men, if they were allowed to have syphilis untreated for a long period of time, and to compare them to men who were treated. That study was finally, the lid was blown off that study in 1972, and it was immediately stopped. And President, I believe it was President Clinton, who issued an apology to the nation and especially to Black people for this horrific, unethical study where they were literally experimented upon like lab animals, where people with disease, an infectious disease, had known efficacious therapy withheld just to see what happens to them. This is the study in Africa now with HPV is very analogous to the Tuskegee study. They're withholding a known effective intervention, neonatal hepatitis B vaccination, for 6 months to see what'll happen. Maybe there's an adverse effect we don't know about, even despite the fact that we've been looking for adverse effects for 30 plus years and we haven't found any. But they're doing this anyway. It's a directly analogous situation to Tuskegee. So if you're an American citizen, you need to know that your tax dollars, our tax dollars, are being used to fund this highly unethical and immoral study that uses Black African babies as experimental animals to see if there's an adverse effect from delayed hepatitis B vaccination, when we know that vaccination against hepatitis B at birth prevents acquisition of hepatitis B in a country where hepatitis B is highly prevalent. This study will result in some of these children who are in the delayed vaccination group. In that 6-month period of time, some of those children will be infected with hepatitis B. There's no question. And of those that are, some will go on to develop chronic hepatitis, will get cirrhosis of the liver and hepatocellular carcinoma years down the road, and they will suffer and die because of it. That won't be captured in this study because the study is just looking at the 5-year period after birth. So the study is real, and when they look for non-specific effects, they're going to look for whatever someone feels like saying happened. The baby had a fever, the baby had a cough, the baby had a rash. Oh, that's a non-specific effect. So this is a study that is really intended to try to find justification for the ACIP's recent decision not to recommend universal hepatitis B vaccination at birth. This is a highly unethical, highly immoral study. It is also flagrantly, floridly racist. The study is not being done on white children in South Denmark. It's not being done on white children in the United States because it would never pass muster here. This study would never be approved in the United States. It's being done on black children in West Africa. This is an unethical and a racist study, and our tax dollars are going to fund it. This is what Robert Kennedy is doing right now. This is what he's making the CDC do right now. This is outrageous. If you are a human being with any semblance of a sense of ethics and morality, and you look at the situation, you must be appalled. The American citizens need to object to this study and demand that our dollars not be used to fund this racist experimentation on African babies. It's gross and it's grotesque, and I am outraged by it, and you should be too. So, with that, Merry Christmas. This is the world we live in today.